Okay, so imagine this. You're 35, married for 8 years, trying everything to have a baby with no luck. And then out of nowhere, an old fling from 2010 adds you on Facebook. You check her profile, and there's her 15-year-old son. Same nose, same build, same weird gap in your front teeth that you've always hated. Your brother looks at the photo and goes, "Dude, that's literally you in middle school." So now you've got two impossible problems, and your wife has no idea. So here's how this whole thing started. The guy, let's just call him Op, is 35 now, married, stable life. No kids, though they've been trying. And out of nowhere, he gets a Facebook friend request. No message, no warning. Just that little red notification. He looks at the name and it takes him a second. Wait, he knows that name from way back. Back in 2010, he was 20 years old, working some retail job, and there was this girl there around his age. They were friends, hung out after work a few times. And then one night, things just kind of happened. A one-time thing, nothing romantic, nothing dramatic, just two young adults. And then a few days later, she got fired. Not because of him, some workplace drama thing, but after that, she disappeared, completely. Wouldn't return calls, wouldn't answer texts. He figured she just wanted to move on. So he did too. That was 15 years ago. He hasn't thought about her in over a decade. Seriously, life happened, but now she's back, and he's curious, right? You would be too, so he clicks on her profile, and that's when things get weird. She has a son, who just turned 15. Okay, so the timing, 2010 to now, that lines up. But lots of things could line up. That's not the crazy part. The crazy part is what he sees when he looks at this kid's photos. Same hair color, same nose, same build. And here's the weird part, same exact smile, including a little gap between the front teeth. A gap that Op himself has always hated in his own photos. He's staring at his own face from 15 years ago. Now he doesn't want to jump to conclusions. People can look alike, right? Coincidences happen. But something makes him want to check. So he shows the photo to his brother. Doesn't say anything, just holds up his phone. And his brother looks at it, looks at him, and goes, "Dude, that looks like you in middle school. Not kind of like you. Not a little similar. That looks like you." So now Op is sitting there trying to process this, and he starts digging a little deeper. He notices that she's married, was married. Looks like she got married a few years after their encounter. Different guy, different ethnicity, actually, and they had a few kids together. But the 15-year-old, he doesn't look like that husband at all, not even close. Meanwhile, the guy she married, he's not in the picture anymore, divorced now. So here's where Op's brain starts doing the math. 2010, one-time thing. She disappears right after. A few months later, she would have found out she was pregnant. And now there's a 15-year-old who shares his hair, his nose, his build, his teeth gap. I mean, come on. He tries to talk himself out of it. Maybe it's just a weird coincidence. Maybe the kid just happens to look like a lot of people, but then he looks at the photo again, and the resemblance isn't just similar, it's uncanny. It's the kind of thing where if you saw them side by side, you wouldn't ask, are they related? You'd ask, how did you not know? And the math lines up perfectly. So now he's stuck, because he can't just ignore this. But he also can't just message this woman out of nowhere and say, "Hey, is that my kid?" Not without thinking it through. Because here's the thing, he's married, happily married, 8 years. And his wife knows about that old fling. She's always known he wasn't a saint before they met. But she obviously doesn't know that there might be a 15-year-old out there with his face. He has no idea how to even start that conversation. And on top of all of that, and this part really messes with your head, he and his wife have been trying to have a baby for years. Tests, treatments, disappointment after disappointment. It's been hard, really hard. And now the idea that he might already have a biological child out there, a teenager he never knew about, someone who might need him, especially as college approaches. Yeah, that's a lot. So he's sitting there, staring at this kid's photos, trying to figure out what to do. Does he message her? Does he wait? And more importantly, how does he tell his wife that he might be a father to a 15-year-old she's never heard of? This is not a small thing. So here's the thing. Op isn't some single guy who can just make a decision on his own. He's been married for 8 years. 8 years, that's a long time. And from everything he says, it's a good marriage. Stable, committed, he loves his wife. But there's something they've been struggling with, something that's been quietly eating at both of them for years. They can't have a kid. I mean, think about that. They've gone through tests, lots of tests, treatments that didn't work, month after month of hope followed by disappointment. It's the kind of thing that wears you down. It's been hard on both of them, really hard. And Op doesn't say it outright, but you can feel it in how he writes. This is something they've been carrying together, a weight. And now, out of nowhere, there's a chance that he already has a biological child, a 15-year-old, a teenager who looks exactly like him, who might not even know the truth about who his real father is. Let that sink in for a second. His wife knows about the old fling. She's always known. He wasn't a saint before they met, and she's never pretended otherwise. That's not the problem. The problem is she doesn't know about this. She doesn't know that a woman from 2010 just popped back up on Facebook with a son who shares Op's smile gap. She doesn't know that he's been staring at photos for hours, trying to convince himself it's just a coincidence. So now he's sitting there, trying to figure out how to even start that conversation. Hey honey, remember that girl I worked with 15 years ago? The one I mentioned once and never talked about again. So, funny story. Yeah, no. He doesn't want to blow up anyone's life. That's the thing. He says it himself. He's not trying to cause a huge mess. But if that kid is his, then he has a right to know. And honestly, the kid has a right to know too, especially now. The kid is 15. That's such a weird, fragile age. Old enough to understand complicated truths, young enough to still be shaped by them. And Op is in a position to help. He says he could greatly help this kid in the next few years, college, stuff like that. He's stable. He has resources. He's not some deadbeat who ran away from responsibility. He just didn't know. But here's where it gets impossible. He's got two problems, two huge problems. Problem one, does he message this woman and just ask straight up, is your son mine? I mean, she added him for a reason, right? She had to know he'd see the photos. She had to know he'd do the math. So why now? Why after 15 years? What does she want? Problem two, how does he tell his wife? Because he can't do this behind her back. That's not who he is. But the conversation itself could crack something open in their marriage. Not because he did anything wrong. He didn't. He was 20, single, and it was one time. But the news itself, the fact that there might be a teenager out there who shares his DNA, while they've been struggling to have a child together, that's not nothing. So he's stuck. Completely stuck. And honestly, most people would be. So Op posts his story on Reddit, right? And the community jumps in, big time. And honestly, most of the comments were pretty solid. No one was tearing him apart. People understood the situation was wild. The overwhelming advice was this: tell your wife first. Not the other woman, not your brother again, your wife. Like immediately. One commenter said, get the facts straight of what you know. She contacted you. You checked her profile. Just make sure you've got all the facts for when you sit down with her. Another person pointed out that the way you tell her matters a lot. There's a difference between just blurting out, I might have a kid somewhere else, versus sitting her down, walking her through the whole thing, showing her the photos, letting her process it with you. One is a bomb. The other is a conversation. And here's the key piece of advice that kept coming up. Do this as a couple. Don't go behind her back. Don't message the other woman first. Because if you do that, and she finds out later, that breaks trust, even if you didn't do anything wrong. One comment really stuck with me. Someone said, if my husband told me he had a 15-year-old he never knew about, I'd just feel bad for him and his son. That's surprisingly compassionate, right? Not anger, not blame, just empathy. Another person said Op should bring up the idea with his wife first, then together decide whether contacting the other woman is even worth pursuing. And Op actually responded to that one. He said, by principle, I do not talk with other women via social or text out of respect for my wife. I want to tie her in on the entire exchange. So he already knew what he had to do. He just needed to hear it from a few hundred strangers first. And this is where it gets really interesting. The very next morning, he told his wife everything. He was nervous. I mean, obviously. How do you even start that conversation? Hey, remember that random girl from before we met? So, funny story. But he just did it. He sat her down. He explained the friend request, the photos, the resemblance, the timing, all of it, and her reaction. She was upset. He says that up front. She wasn't thrilled, but she was calm. She listened. And then she looked at the photos herself. And here's the moment. She said, and I quote, "Yeah, that kid has your teeth." Think about that. She saw the same thing he saw, the same smile gap, the same undeniable resemblance. She didn't get defensive. She didn't accuse him of hiding something. She just agreed. They talked for a long time, hours probably, and they decided together that he should reach out, not behind her back together, with her knowing every step. So later that day, Op messaged the woman on Facebook. He kept it brief, direct. He said he noticed her friend request, but wasn't comfortable accepting it since he's married. Then he asked straight up, "Why did you reach out?" He added that if there was something important she wanted to discuss, he was willing to listen. But otherwise, he'd prefer not to reconnect. No accusations. No, "Is that my kid?" right out of the gate, just a door left slightly open. And then he waited, because at this point he'd done everything right. He told his wife. They made a plan together. He reached out respectfully. Whatever came next, at least he wasn't hiding anything. But the ball was now in her court. She responded. And what she said? Okay, but here's the crazy part. It's way more complicated than Op ever expected. So back in 2010, around the same time she and Op hooked up, she was also seeing someone else. An on-again, off-again boyfriend. Messy situation, right? When she found out she was pregnant, she did the math and believed the child was most likely that boyfriend's. So she told him that, and he accepted it. For 15 years, that guy believed he was the father. He paid child support. He was technically on the hook. But here's the thing, he was never really involved in the boy's life. According to her, he barely showed up. No birthday parties, no school events, none of that. Just checks. And apparently he wasn't exactly father of the year material anyway. Op got curious and looked this guy up. A simple Google search. And what he found? A long history of legal trouble, multiple DUIs, time in prison, other offenses. This wasn't some stable dude who got screwed over. This was someone who'd been in and out of the system for years. So for 15 years, that arrangement just existed. The guy paid. The kid grew up. Everyone moved on. Until recently, the guy got married again, and his new wife started asking questions. Specifically, she noticed that the boy didn't really look like her husband at all. Different features, different build, just not his kid. So she started pushing for a DNA test. He finally agreed, and the results came back negative. He is not the biological father. Now, here's where this gets legally insane. The guy is now trying to terminate his child support, which, okay, that makes sense. Why should he pay for a kid that isn't his? But he's not stopping there. He is actually suing to recover all the money he paid over the past 15 years. Every single dollar. I mean, think about that. 15 years of payments. We're talking tens of thousands of dollars, maybe more, and he wants it all back. Op is an attorney, by the way. He mentions that kind of casually, but it matters. So he knows how insane this claim is. From a legal standpoint, recovering past child support is extremely difficult. Courts really hate taking money back once it's been paid. Why? Because that money supported a child. It paid for food, clothes, housing, school supplies. The child didn't know the guy wasn't his real dad. The child just lived, and courts prioritize stability for the child over fairness to the adults. Every time. Without another father legally established as the biological parent, most courts won't vacate the original paternity finding. They don't want to leave a child with no legally responsible parent, even if the original assumption was wrong, even if the guy got played. And here's the kicker. This guy apparently agreed to support the child 15 years ago without ever demanding a paternity test. He just took her word for it. Or maybe he didn't care at the time. Either way, he didn't do his due diligence. And now, 15 years later, he's trying to undo all of it. Op says in his jurisdiction that principle holds true. Overturning paternity this late is nearly impossible unless another father is confirmed and willing to assume legal responsibility. And that's where Op comes in. Because when the DNA results came back negative, the woman started thinking, who else could be the father? And she thought of Op, the only other possible guy from that time period. So she waited, not a few days, not a few weeks. She waited almost 6 months before reaching out to him on Facebook. Think about that, 6 months. She sat with this information. She processed it. She told her son the truth, that the man he believed to be his father isn't biologically related to him. That must have been an incredibly hard conversation. The kid is 15. That's such a fragile age to learn something like that, but she did it. She felt it was time to be honest. And then she reached out to Op, not for money, not demanding anything. She hasn't asked him for a single thing. No child support request, no contact demands, no involvement requirements. She just said, I wanted you to know, and I'm open to a DNA test whenever you're ready. That's it. That's all she asked for. Op is now consulting with an attorney friend who's licensed in her state. They're walking through options and potential legal implications depending on how things unfold. Because if Op is the biological father, and if he steps forward, that changes everything. The other guy might actually have a shot at terminating his support obligation if there's another father willing to take over. But that's a huge decision, with huge consequences. And through all of this, Op's wife has been more understanding than he could have ever hoped for. They're processing everything together, but he can tell it weighs on her. Of course it does. So now he's sitting with this question. Does he take the DNA test? Does he find out for sure? And if the answer is yes, that is his son, what does he do next? So here's where Op has an advantage most people wouldn't. He's an attorney, not practicing in the woman's state, but still, he knows how this stuff works. And he's got a friend who is licensed there. So he's not going into this blind. He's already talked to that friend, walked through some of the options, and the legal reality. It's kind of cold, honestly. That other guy, the one who paid child support for 15 years, he's trying to get out of it. And yeah, on the surface, that feels fair. Why should he pay for a kid that isn't his? But the courts don't really care about fair. They care about the child. And right now, that teenager has a legal father on paper. Overturning that, this late, it's almost impossible. Unless another father steps up, legally steps up, confirms paternity, and willingly assumes the responsibility. That's where Op comes in. If he takes a DNA test and it's positive, then the legal landscape shifts. Suddenly, there's someone else. Someone who can be legally named as the biological father. And that might be enough for the original guy to finally terminate his obligation. But here's the thing. That doesn't mean Op will be forced to pay back child support. No, that's not how it works. Past support is past support. The money is gone. It fed the kid. It clothed him. You can't unspend that. What it would mean is going forward, future support that could shift. But Op isn't even there yet. He's not making any decisions. He's just sitting with it. Meanwhile, the woman has already told her son the truth. The 15-year-old knows that the man he thought was his father isn't biologically related. That's huge. That's the kind of news that can really mess with a teenager's head. She didn't wait for Op to decide. She just did it because she felt it was time to be honest. So the kid knows, and he's processing it, which is probably going to take a while. Op says the woman seems sincere. No signs of ulterior motives. She hasn't asked for money, hasn't pushed for contact, hasn't demanded anything. She just opened the door and said, I'm here when you're ready. And that actually makes it harder in some ways, because if she were demanding or crazy, the choice would be easy. Ignore her, block her, move on. But she's not. She's just a person trying to do the right thing for her son. So, yeah, this is heavy. Op and his wife are still processing everything. It's been a long weekend, he says, and you can feel that. She's been more understanding than he could have hoped for, but he can tell it weighs on her. How could it not? For now, they're taking things one step at a time. No rush, no pressure. The woman isn't pushing, so they have the space to breathe. But here's the thing about privacy. Once you put something on Reddit, it's out there. The woman actually saw his original post. Read it. So Op went back and heavily edited the update, removed anything that could identify people, preserved attorney-client privilege. But he still felt an obligation to let everyone know what happened because so many people gave sincere advice when he was spinning out. That said, he may not post another update. For privacy reasons, for his family's sake, for the teenager who didn't ask for any of this. So if this is the last we hear from Op, honestly, that's okay. Some stories don't need a perfect ending. Sometimes just knowing that people are trying to do the right thing, that's enough. Hey, if you made it this far, you clearly love these wild, real-life stories. So here's the deal. There are a couple more waiting for you on screen right now. Watch one more or save them for later. Either way, I really appreciate you hanging out, seriously. And hey, if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button. It genuinely helps. All right, I'll see you in the next one.